He not only attacked her, though, he also went on stage and waxed lyrical about the late Arnold Palmer's genitals. Am I allowed to say that on air? I
Yep.
try to be as euphemistic as possible, but this is something that he actually did. His brain is disintegrating on the national stage. This is someone who confused Biden with Obama 7 times, who confused Nancy Pelosi with Nikki Haley, someone who said that the Americans dominated the airports during the American Revolution. Need I remind you that the American Revolution happened in 1770s? So this is someone who clearly isn't fully there.
I'm wondering, listening to those two clips, obviously, it's ratcheting up. We've only got a couple of weeks left. How do you feel, Amy, when you hear Trump saying things like that about Kamala Harris? Does that make you feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, I've never liked how the president talks about many people, as a matter of fact, and it's been one of the issues that I have with him as a candidate and as a president. So I don't, I'm not going to defend. I do think, of course we're going to hear hot rhetoric, but I just think that there's, rhetoric like that isn't necessary. So.
Lindy, do you think there's a danger that it just lowers the tone, dare I say it, of the campaigning? Is it something that voters respond to? I mean, I'm guessing Trump's base probably quite like it. I'm just wondering wider across voters whether this is something that they like to see their candidates doing, really, just swearing about each other.
Thank you so much for having me today. I also want to give Amy credit for refusing to defend his remarks because it is indefensible, and I appreciate that from a Republican. He not only attacked her, though, he also went on stage and waxed lyrical about the late Arnold Palmer's genitals. Am I allowed to say that on air?
Yep.
I try to be as euphemistic as possible, but this is something that he actually did. Okay, we are what, 15 days from the election, and he's talking about another dude's junk. I feel bad even just saying it, but that's what he did, and we shouldn't sugarcoat the words of the Republican candidate for president.
Amy, I want to ask you a little bit about the health questions which are bubbling around about Trump. I was reading that there's been analysis published in the New York Times of Trump's speeches up to earlier this month, and they found that he's doing far less than he was in 2016. 283 throughout all of 2016. He's only held 61 rallies so far in 2024. There are reports he's scaling back his campaigning because he's feeling tired, he's feeling fatigued. What do you make of those reports?
I think that's possible. He's an older man than he was, obviously. He's nearing 80 years old. So it's possible. I also think that the assassination attempts have had their effect on that. Well, a couple things. So I think that there's some real fear around that, as there should be. And I think that they've encouraged him to do a few less and to change how they do them. And then thirdly, frankly, he's continuing to do well in the polls and gather strength the quieter he is, because when he gets out there, he says dumb things. So if I'm on the campaign, I'm telling him, just sit tight, because frankly, the Harris Walz campaign is faltering, and let them continue to stumble.
I just wonder, Amy, though, how much of a problem it is when for so long Trump was going on about Joe Biden being old when he was still running. He's old, he's not up to it. That's difficult now for Trump. If this is what he's doing and he is an old man, and if he's feeling a bit tired, and on the other hand, you've got Kamala Harris going, look at me, here are my medical records, I'm young and healthy, let's go.
Yeah.
Right,
No,
his brain is disintegrating.
It was always a little ludicrous to have a 80-year-old man being criticized by a 78-year-old man, right? I think both candidates for their age were troubling. Again, however, it's interesting to me that age is now somehow not an issue. And we are talking more about Harris and the stumbles of her campaign and sort of the finger pointing. And frankly, that's what's in the news more and more. Yes, Trump saying things, but that seems sort of baked into this cake. And so voters are really sort of getting an eyeful of Vice President Harris. And that's, I think, ultimately what this is going to come down to.
Go on, Lindy.
Thank you so much. I just want to say his brain is disintegrating on the national stage. This is someone who confused Biden with Obama 7 times, who confused Nancy Pelosi with Nikki Haley, someone who said that the Americans dominated the airports during the American Revolution. Need I remind you that the American Revolution happened in 1770s? So this is someone who clearly isn't fully there, and his prefrontal cortex, which governs inhibition, is obviously atrophying as well. He's unable to contain himself. We saw him swaying bizarrely to the music for 40 minutes on stage, inexplicably. And Kristen Noem, or the Governor Noem, I'm sorry, Governor Noem was just standing there not knowing what to do because it was just completely bizarre. And there are reports that his own senior advisors are incredulous and unable to understand why he's doing what he's doing. And he says things that are just completely unfathomable as well. He praises Hannibal Lecter. He talks about batteries and sharks. He talks about everything under the sun except the issues that matter the most to the American people. And when he does happen to mention a policy or two, he's out there advocating for tariffs on all consumer goods, which will jack up prices for all Americans and cause widespread suffering, not to mention a collapse of the American economy. So everything he says is just completely bonkers, for lack of a better word.
And yet, Lindy,
and yet somehow he's winning.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say.
Let me tell you, he may be old, he may be in cognitive decline, but he's a master at lying.
Hang on, Amy, hang on. Lindy, go ahead, and then Amy, come in. Go on, Lindy.
Well, as I said, he's a master manipulator. He knows how to gaslight like nobody else. He's been lying to the American people for decades. This is just what he does. And he's trying to memory hold the final year of his presidency, which is an absolute calamity, let's be honest. We couldn't find toilet paper. The stock market's crashing. 20% of the country was on unemployment, was out of a job. So this is just obscene. We need to remind people how awful it was, how terrible it was to wake up each day to just like brace ourselves for the next terrible tweet from our president. And I just want to say one thing in terms of, Amy brought up a good point. One of the worst things to happen was to block him from Twitter, because a lot of Americans have forgotten just how disastrous and how just crazy this guy is. This guy is just crazy. He is not the person who's going to wake up at 3 a.m. and take that proverbial 3 a.m. emergency call. He's absolutely incapable of handling matters of national security.
Okay, Amy, come in.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this. He's been on Twitter for, I don't know even how many months now, 5 months, 4 months, 5 months. And I appreciate Lindy's talking points, and there are some that I agree with. But the facts are that she's being willfully ignoring the struggles that her candidate is having. Frankly, the immigration issue is going to be a massive problem for Vice President Harris. The work that the Biden administration and the Harris administration did on immigration is catching up to them. The missteps of Tim Walz as the vice presidential candidate, as my governor, he has stumbled on the national stage. Some of the interview choices, and we talked about this last week here. We talked about the Vogue interview. We talked about some of the podcasts she's chosen, some of her performances. I mean, like, I'm not here to defend Trump, but to pretend like everyone in America is just morons for supporting him, and that and sort of berating them into voting for Harris is not working. So I think,
Amy, can I respectfully respond?
They just don't want to.
Go on, Lindy.
Thank you, Amy. You bring up a very interesting point, but I do want to say she understands it's the economy. Stupid, as we always say. It's really coming down to that. People have suffered tremendously over the last couple of years, and a lot of that is through no fault of the Biden-Harris administration. Inflation was a global phenomenon. Let's not forget that. And let's not forget the fact that the United States emerged out of this situation more strongly and more resiliently than any nation on earth. Inflation is now under 3%, well within the range of what the Federal Reserve wants. All right. But it's cumulative inflation that has caused immense suffering. And that's why she's laid out a number of economic proposals to address that, including the $25,000 down payment payment for first-time home buyers, including the $6,000 child tax
Lindy,
credit.
let me ask you this. Lindy, let me ask you this. We're going to play out a conversation I have with somebody who's in Nevada before 7 o'clock this morning. I was really fascinated to hear that in Nevada, around 50% of the voters are Latino, and Latinos historically should be going towards Democrats. That's often how it works. And yet Kamala Harris is really struggling to mobilise that vote in Nevada. And you just wonder, in light of everything you and Amy have outlined about what Donald Trump is doing, why can Kamala Harris not? She should be wiping the floor with Donald Trump, judging by what you're saying of all the mad things he's saying. But he is appealing to people. Why is Kamala Harris not managing to get those people out to vote for her at the moment?
I really do believe that it's economic suffering, as I mentioned above. I really think people have just been having a hard time making ends meet. But I do want to mention that we have achieved that so-called soft landing that everybody wanted. The economy is improving so much. All right, we had 254,000 jobs created. That is that is just huge. So many months.
If that's true, Lindy, then why are people suffering? You just said
because of inflation, as I just mentioned.
we
but
fixed
inflation
everything.
Has come down.
People
But the thing is, inflation doesn't go back down.
Hang on, Lindy.
Prices don't come back down. After they rise,
Lindy, hang on. Go on, Amy. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, you say both things. You say people are suffering, and then you say, but we've got a soft landing, and it's fixed, and it's only cumulative, and all of these things. People don't believe that. And it's economy. It's not just economy, although that is a big piece. Immigration is a massive issue. Other sort of kind of woke nonsense people are tired of. Like, there's just a lot of factors that go into this. And so they are, it's almost like Donald Trump is winning in spite of himself. That's what I'm saying. And I'm pretty stunned with it myself.
Yeah.
I just want to say I have faith in the American people, and I know that they can hold two truths at the same time. Yes, the economy is improving, but yes, things have been, things could have been better over the last couple of years. These are not mutually exclusive truth. They both can be true. The economy is improving by all economic indicators. That is why the Federal Reserve feels comfortable enough lowering rates again. So clearly we are on the right trajectory.
Right.
We are going in the
Lindy
right
and Amy, we're going to have to leave it there. We've got 2 weeks left. We're going to catch up again, obviously, before then. We love your conversations. Thank you so much for being with us. It's such a great insight into the conversations that are happening right now in the US. So I'm really grateful to both of you. You heard there from Lindy Li. She's a Democrat political strategist. She sits on President Biden's National Finance Committee. And you also heard there from Amy Cox. She is Minnesota's first female Senate Majority Leader. She's a Republican strategist. And we love hearing from both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. That economy point is really interesting because, corrected for inflation, household incomes rose sharply during the first 3 years of the Trump administration, then stagnated in his last year and Biden's first, then fell sharply in 2022 as inflation surged, recovering somewhat in 2023 as inflation began to subside. And actually, in a lot of the reporting from swing states over the course of the last couple of days, there's been a reflection on the economic situation for people that their memories take them back to Trump when their household incomes were up. And that's where a lot of people's thoughts are going when it comes to how to vote. I remember a time a few years ago when Trump was president and I felt wealthier.
Well, I remember when I was in the States in December last year, and so many people you were talking to, they were just saying, what is going on? I just feel so much poorer. Yeah. All that matters to me is having money in my pocket, and I just don't have it. It was so much easier before the pandemic. We haven't recovered. Life is tough. And I guess that is what is... it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks,
it's going to be so good. The latest